Okay, so good evening, everyone, and welcome to our session today, Upgrade Your Mindset with Emotional Intelligence. I'm Steve Sankar, Transformational Life Coach. I'm very happy that you've chosen to join us today. And anyone new to the community today, I'm very happy that you are joining us. We have this session once a month. We've been going for it's a year now, and we've picked up some really great topics already, and they're all on YouTube. When I send out the link to view the recording, I will also include the YouTube channel, so you'll be able to look at all the recordings there. So let's jump in right away. So as we go through our session, I think it's Zoom that's having some issues. I think that's what's happening. If you see anyone in the waiting room and they're there for a while, please just message in the chat and I'll let them in. I think we're having a little technical issue with Zoom. A small thing, we'll be fine. We'll be fine with that. So just some helpful guidance to enjoy the session. Please keep an open mind and an open heart that's willing to learn. The information that's being shared here, it's for your consideration. Take whatever you want from it and leave everything else behind. Don't, you're not under any pressure, any obligation. As you go through the session, there will be opportunities to share information in the chats. Um, Please be open and respectful of other people's perspectives. We've all had a uniquely different life experience. No two of us are the same. We are similar, but we're not the same. So there are times we will notice people have completely differing views from us. So see if there's something in there to learn, but always be respectful if sharing. And you know, as you see information in the chat, I ask you that you please refrain from giving anyone advice. All right, we're all here to learn. No advice, please. And as we go through the session, please feel free at any time to write your comments, any questions also in the chat. A little about me. So I'm a certified professional coach. I have expertise in mindset change and transformation. And I support individuals like yourselves and teams and organizations with empowerment, with growth, with mental development. And I support everyone either in person or online. And so, like, we have this session online. There are times when I will do things in person in the public space that are also free to attend. And you could always learn about those opportunities on my social media. So, particularly Facebook and Instagram, Professional Coach Steve. So I invite you to subscribe and follow, and you'll receive opportunities to be with me in person. And again, for free. This is a free space for growth and transformation. When we think of our session today, emotional intelligence, it's a skill. Think of it as a skill, not as a trait we're born with. It's like a muscle we can develop over time with attention and practice. So today we will be exploring what exactly is emotional intelligence, how it impacts on our life, whether it's at work, whether it's at home, and learn some simple ways to develop emotional intelligence. When you think of emotional intelligence, we experience emotions constantly. It's a trait of human beings. Sometimes, we might hear the term, we might have heard the term before that someone's up in their feelings, or we can tell that there are some people who are often exhibiting emotions and acting according to those emotions. When you think of yourself, have you ever said something in a moment that you later regretted? I can tell you that I have a lot of practice with that when I was younger, in my 20s and 30s. Um, Feelings, emotions, and just acting on it and getting into trouble. Lots of times getting into trouble. And maybe you haven't had that experience, but it can be quite a messy situation when you don't have the awareness of how to manage yourself. By the end of the session, you would have increased awareness about emotional intelligence and learn how to manage them. Think of it as leadership. Learn how to manage them instead of being controlled by them. I would say that there are three main aspects or three parts of emotional intelligence. The first one is self-awareness, recognizing your emotions, seeing how you feel, developing that awareness, right? The second part of it is regulating yourself. That is you being in control of yourself in terms of how you act rather than your emotions determining how you act. And the third part of it is about understanding others, you know, being able to interpret, to appreciate what somebody might be going through and how best we can engage with them. I'd like for you at this time to take a moment and write in the chat what emotion do you believe you struggle with the most? What emotion do you believe that you struggle with the most? I'm not seeing anything yet. Navasha, Lisa, Kathy, Lilawati, what emotion do you believe you struggle with the most? No need for anyone to feel shy or embarrassed. Mm, mm-hmm. Thanks, Ria. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anxiety. Patience. Yeah. Yeah. Mm. We all have emotions, and there are quite a range of them. And when you think of managing your emotions, not only the negative ones, but it's important to know how to manage the positive ones too. Sometimes you could become so excited or so happy in a moment with someone or about something, and that emotion can cloud your thinking, leading you to do something that you later regret. I'm not sure if you've had any of you have had that experience where you felt very, very happy. Think about maybe meeting someone on a date, going on a date with someone, and you feel very infatuated. And based on those feelings, you go and you do things later. You think that I shouldn't have. I shouldn't have. I'm just sharing experiences I seem to have had, right? Um, you know, when we think of our normal life, sometimes we could become angry with someone in a moment. Say it's at work, something happens in the workplace, and you become angry. As a result of that anger, you now speak and behave in unprofessional ways with a colleague. Ways that in the workplace it is explicitly written that we don't use those behaviors here. Think about where that could lead. When we become angry, we also communicate poorly. Communicate poorly because the thinking is no longer clear. Emotions have a way of creating tunnel vision, just like stress, and we're unable to think broadly and freely. So these emotions can get in the way of us communicating what we need to. And when we think about emotions and stress, it can certainly increase our level of stress, anxiety, and depression if we are unable to manage our emotions. And emotions are a natural part of life, of being a human being. And every emotion is valid, and every emotion has its benefit. Because what they are signals. They signal to us, they can signal to us what's happening, creating awareness. But we know that we don't always act on our feelings because we can get into a lot of trouble for that. And in our everyday life, whether it's at home, whether it's at work, whether it's that space in between home and work, whatever happens there, whether it's going on socially, we have lots of people that we engage with. We have important relationships in our life um, that sometimes we can be impacted by the behaviors of others. Maybe they're not practicing emotional intelligence. And, being shouting, being angry, being unkind, none of these things, but being violent, none of these things are acceptable human behaviors. They may be normal in the world we're living in, but they're not acceptable. When when we have children in our care, we never teach them to be that way. We never teach them to be violent. We never teach them to be disrespectful. We never teach them to do things that hurt people's feelings. We don't do that. But as adults, we seem to do it. We do the same things that we teach the young ones not to do. And maybe it's because we're not aware in the moment of the alternate options that we have. Sadness, yeah, yeah. We're not aware. But there are repercussions because when we think of these strong emotions, they can rewire our brain, neuroplasticity. They can rewire our brain to create more of that experience, more of it. So I invite you to, using your pen and your pad, to reflect and identify any important relationship in your life where you're impacted by the behaviors of someone in a negative way, someone who isn't practicing emotional intelligence. See if you could identify such a relationship. So what we're looking for is a relationship. And secondly, how do you react or respond in the challenging moments in that relationship? You know, what I want you to know that when it comes to emotional intelligence, it's not about the situation. It's about how I am responding to it. And there is a difference between responding and reacting. A response is a thought out approach. Reacting is when it just comes off the cuff. Not much thought. I just do something that feels appropriate at the time. Let's look at some tools now for building emotional intelligence. The first one is what we call the pause technique. So I'm going to pull up a slide. Let's see how that goes. Hmm. Yes, yes, I'm looking at the comments. Okay. So the pause principle, so it's 4 steps. You first notice what you're feeling. That means self-awareness. And we all have a level of self-awareness. It might be low, it might be medium, it might be high, but we all do have a level of self-awareness already. So it's noticing, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? And there are ways to build your self-awareness. All right, there are different practices and exercises. And it's really about just knowing what's happening with you. Our body gives us signs. when we are experiencing strong emotions. So sometimes if you become angry, you could feel tension in your throat, in your chest, your face. The second thing is that you name. So you first notice, then you name the emotion. So am I feeling angry? Am I upset? Am I feeling hurt? Is it fear? And the third one is that you breathe. You take a moment. So you become aware in terms of what you're feeling, you name it, you identify it, and then you take a moment for yourself just to get into your place of power. And the fourth one, the fourth step is that you choose how you want to respond. You choose how you want to respond instead of reacting. You know, there are some reactions that can get us into a lot of trouble when we think of things you might see in the news and the public space that happen where people perform actions because they're so angry. The extent of it is horrible. They can end up in jail. They can end up in jail. Um, Managing your emotions, being aware of your emotions is not weakness, It's a sign of leadership. It's actually strength and it's intelligence. Being aware of your emotions and being able to manage it. And it is definitely a leadership skill. We may not necessarily think of ourselves as leaders, but I always say, um, if someone was to make a movie or film of your life, you would be the lead actor. You may not feel like the lead actor in your life, but you are. You would be the star. You would be the star. So we have to exhibit leadership qualities and skills to create the best possible life for ourselves. So I'd like to invite you to think of a situation where you can use the pause principle. So it's a situation where you find yourself not being in control of your emotions. So see if you could find one. And think of a situation where, so this is something that occurred, and I would say think of a low level one, not a high level one. Low level in terms of intensity, where you weren't in control, right? And observe how you felt at that time. So recognize the emotion and take a breath and choose the most appropriate response. One that is not um, influenced by the emotion. Choose a response and see if what you choose, if it's different to what you did at the time. And it ought to be because a response is different from a reaction. Another thing that you can do, another approach other than the pause technique, is looking at the situation differently. Um, Being curious, like what else could it be? So someone comes and speaks to you in a particular way um, that you don't appreciate. Maybe the tone, maybe the words. Um, Instead of just focusing on that, what else could it be? Clearly, the person is in pain. Anger is a sign of pain, a sign of hurt, right? That's why we become angry, because we become hurt, and anger is the thing that we do. Um, so the person is clearly in pain. So when you think about it, however someone behaves, that's a reflection of them, not of you, not of you. My words, my thoughts, my actions, that's a reflection of me. So if I say something to you that is mean, then that's only a reflection of me. So when you begin to look at circumstances in this way and people's behavior, you reduce the emotional intensity, because when you internalize it, you can go on an emotional roller coaster. Or you just look at it and you keep it outside of you and see what else might be happening with the person. There are some very common emotional traps that we can get into. Very, very common. One of them is reacting instantly to situations, with people, to things without thinking, just reacting instantly. Someone says something and it's an immediate reaction. There is a lot of misguided information in the public space on social media. People talk about mirroring behavior and reflecting behavior. Um, that's pretty immature and very irresponsible, because there are consequences for poor actions. There are consequences for poor actions. So instead of reacting instantly when things happen, we could pause. We could pause and choose how we respond. And this is quite useful at work, at home. While we are able to manage ourselves, others may not be able to do that. So while we are dialing it down, others could be going up. And if we go up too, we can end up with a fire. But by being able to manage ourselves, by being able to be in control of our feelings, we could bring things down, we could de-escalate. Think about you are having a tense moment with a young person, maybe your child, maybe a relative. You don't want to say things and do things that you'll regret later on. Because anger can bring out the worst of us. The worst, the worst, the worst, the worst. And we can humiliate ourselves so badly. And again, think of the other side of the emotions when you feel very joyous and you feel happy and you do things that you regret. Watch out for those feelings. A second one is taking things personally. We internalize. We think everything is about us. Everything. Somebody looks at us in a particular way, we think that's about us. There are some people who can think that all the world does is looking at them. That's not reality, you know. It's not. So by taking things personally, we hurt ourselves. And hurt feelings do not just evaporate, they don't just disappear. We have to actually do things to heal from it. It doesn't hurt, the hurt doesn't heal naturally. And I believe that every human being on this planet can benefit from some healing right now. Everyone. It's a really difficult world to be living in, and everyone could benefit from healing. So, why are we taking things, why are we being so sensitive and so delicate, getting our feelings hurt for everything to then have to recover? We now have to recover from the hurt that I have brought into my life. The third one is suppressing those emotions instead of managing them and resolving them. So things happen and you just bottle it up because it's probably what you know to do. Or maybe you think there's no harm in it, or you think it might pass. It goes and it stays. It stays right where you put it. And it waits. It waits for us. And we have to deal with it at some point. You know, when you think of this term psychosomatic illnesses, it's strong emotions that turn into illnesses in our body, you know. So it doesn't only rewire our brains. You know, it's said that anger leads to heart disease, cardiovascular disease. Stress can lead to cancer. You could do your own research online and understand how these emotions can harm us. So by resolving the matters, learning how to talk things through, learning how to not personalize and internalize things can save us all in the long run. So check and see what emotions you might be suppressing at this time in any challenging relationship that you have. You know, whatever you find, figure out how you can work through that. But don't suppress them. Don't think you can eat those feelings and they'll be digested. No. No, no, no. They stay and they accumulate over time and it becomes quite a problem. And it could eventually end up creating severe, severe illnesses in our bodies and ruining our nervous systems. So we are almost at the end of our time together. Um, and I know that I shared what could be some simple points. I like I like to take a moment and invite anyone um, who might be interested in sharing anything you're taking away from our time together today. And I will stay on after the end time as normal for a chit chat and any discussion that we like. Let's see. All right. If anyone's interested in sharing anything, any thoughts, what you're taking from the session, you can do that at this time. Mhm. Mhm. Good job. Good job. So yeah, we're certainly having a little issue with the Zoom. Um, mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. You know, someone's behavior is a reflection of them, not you. What they say reflects them, not you. What you say would reflect who you are. So in closing up, I want you to know that you can build your emotional intelligence. It's a skill that can allow you to grow and excel in your life. And certainly, it is not a very common skill, meaning that I could tell in my own experience that many people could benefit from developing that emotional intelligence, whether it's in leadership roles in the workplace, or whether it's at home. When you think about road rage, that's poor emotional intelligence. There are lots of ways that it shows up in our life where I act and I behave because of how I feel. All right? And we don't need to control everything. We just need to manage how we respond. We just need to manage how we respond. Because in every moment of every day, we create our future. We create our life experience. And if you feel that you would like to begin developing and building your emotional intelligence, I invite you to get in touch with me. That is certainly something that I support people with frequently developing the emotional intelligence. Um, I will share with you when I send out the recording. Um, I have a special program that I've developed for housewives and retirees. Um, I've observed that so many people, housewives and retirees, are experiencing stress, anxiety, and depression based on their situations, their life experiences. So I've created a special program to support them that they should find very affordable and very reachable. And that's my act of love and kindness. So I will share that with you. And um, thank you all for joining. Thank you for joining me, joining us for this session. And one thing that you can work on for homework after this session is give some thought and then write down what what your life would look like if you were in control of your emotions. What your life would look like, or what would your life look like if you were in control of your emotions all the time? What would your life look like? And when you do that, give attention to how you would feel during your days, what your days would be like. So we are out of time. So thank you all so much for joining. And I look forward to seeing you again at the next session. So let us stop the recording.